If you've been with us for the last couple of Sundays, you know that we've been talking about progressing in our Christian walk, becoming more mature in our service to God. And remember last week I was showing you that developing as we should as Christians is probably one of the biggest problems the church is facing today. There's a lot of Christians out there today that are just not where they should be. They're not at the level that they ought to be for the number of years that they've been a Christian. And we all recognize that in other areas of life, a failure to develop and a failure to mature is not accepted, but we think that Christianity is the one area where it should be accepted. And so a lot of Christians just sit on the sidelines. We just sit idly by and just watch everybody else do something, and we just stay the same year in, year out with the same person. We never change. We never develop. We just stay the same. We would just stay stagnant. Well, that's not acceptable to God, and it doesn't need to be acceptable to us either. But what I want to do for you this morning is I want to give you 4 steps that are going to help you to progress forward spiritually. 4 steps are going to help you to become the person that you need to be for God. Number 1, first thing you need to recognize, if you are going to develop as a Christian, number 1, you have got to become dissatisfied with a lack of progress. That's the first step. As long as we remain comfortable where we are, as long as we just remain satisfied staying as the same old person year in and year out, you're never going to change. Why would you? You're comfortable where you are. You have no reason to. We've got to learn to become dissatisfied with a lack of spiritual maturity. Jesus said, as he was talking to the people in Luke chapter 13, verse number 24, that we have to strive to enter in at the narrow gate. We have to make sure that our lives are on the narrow path and that we're not going down the broad path that everybody else is going down. The broad path is easy to go down. Everybody likes it. Everybody thinks it's fun. And once you're on it, you get comfortable and you don't want to get off of it and get onto the narrow path because it's more difficult. And so a lot of times we get comfortable going with the flow with everybody else that we don't really care if we develop for God. You know, in Revelation chapter 13, verses 15 through 16, the Bible talks about lukewarm Christians there. Christians that are not on fire for God, but at the same time, they're not stone cold dead either. You know, a lot of times we look at ourselves and we think, well, you know, I'm not all that bad. I'm not out there running around partying. I'm not out there doing this. I haven't killed anybody. I'm not committing murder. I'm not stealing. I'm not doing all this bad stuff. But at the same time, we're not really doing anything. We just live our lives. We have fun. We go out with our friends. We party and we do this and we do that. But what are we doing for God? Sometimes we just become lukewarm. And what does the Bible say about lukewarm Christians there? Revelation 3, verses 15 through 16 says that God will spew them out of His mouth. God's not going to accept that, and we need to recognize that. But, you know, there's a lot of people, a lot of Christians who will recognize and will even admit to you and to themselves that they are lukewarm. But what concerns me more than that, what concerns me more than the fact that some Christians fully admit that they are lukewarm, is that week in and week out, they walk out the door and do nothing about it. That's what ought to concern you more than just being lukewarm. That you're lukewarm and you're not going to do anything about it. That's what ought to concern us. So the first thing that we need to recognize if we're going to make any kind of progress is that we've got to become dissatisfied. We've got to learn to pop that bottle out of our mouth and get onto some meat. That's really what it boils down to. We've got to stop being comfortable being a baby and realize that we've got to become a man or a woman for God. Until we get that in our heads and until we get that desire and that fire built up in us, as long as we're comfortable where we're at, why would we want to change? So first step, become dissatisfied with where you're at. Number 2, you then have to set a goal for yourself. Once you resolve within yourself that you're going to change, that you're going to become, the person you need to be, next thing you got to do is you got to set a goal. Now, when I talk about setting a goal for what you want to be, you got to envision the person that you want to be. You got to have a vision of where you're going and what you want. And when I talk about setting a goal, I'm not talking about setting some little baby step goal. Because sometimes that's what we do. We think, okay, I want to progress a little bit more spiritually, and so we set a little itty bitty goal for ourselves. I'll pray 2 minutes longer tonight. Yeah. I'm not talking about those little kind of goals. I'm talking about setting the bar high. I'm talking about shooting for the moon. Setting a goal that will actually challenge you. Challenge yourself to do something that you just know you can't do. Because when you actually finally put the effort into it and then you do it and you amaze yourself, you think, I can't believe I actually did that. Then you realize what you're capable of. And you think, well, if I did that, if I accomplished this goal that I kept telling myself for years I couldn't do, then what else can I do? What else am I capable of doing? See, that's what setting the bar high does for you. Now, I'm not talking about setting an impossible goal. I'm talking about setting a challenging goal. A goal that is actually going to push you to get outside of your comfort zone, that's going to actually push you into new territory, doing new things you've never done before, things that you thought you never could do. Sometimes when we go and we set goals, I understand that a lot of times you think, well, I want to set a realistic goal for myself. I understand that, but you got to be careful. Don't underestimate what you're capable of doing. Don't undershoot yourself. Because so many times that's what we do, and we always end up never changing. Because just think about it. If you set a goal and it's something you've already done before, well, how's that going to help you to change? You've already done this stuff before, so it's not really challenging you to do anything different. You're not progressing. You're not developing. If you set a goal you've already done before, that doesn't do anything. So we have to make sure that we set a good goal. When I think about changing, and I think about setting a goal of the kind of person that we want to be, our goal needs to be, y'all, it needs to be that we want to change so drastically that folks ain't even going to recognize us anymore. That's the kind of change we need. And when I think about that kind of a change, the first person that comes to my mind, and that probably comes to most everybody's mind, is Paul. Because when you read there in Acts chapter 9, when he was actually converted, after he was converted, Acts 9:22 says that he continued to develop and to grow. And as a matter of fact, he grew so much and he changed so radically that verse number 26 tells you that the people couldn't even believe it. They couldn't believe that that was the same old Paul they'd always known. They couldn't believe that he had changed and become a Christian. They just wouldn't believe it. We need to look at that and we need to think to ourselves, that's what I want. I want to change so much that people won't recognize me. Because that's a realistic goal. A goal to actually change into a new creature, into something different. And thinking about the Old Testament, there's even an example from that. We think about Joseph. Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery. He was in slavery for several years. And, excuse me, as years went by, he finally became Pharaoh's right-hand man. And when his brothers finally came to see him again, he had changed so much and become so successful, they didn't even recognize him. That's how you know you've achieved success. That's how you know you've really developed. And that's what we need to be like spiritually. So we got to become dissatisfied with where we're at. And then we have to set a goal of what we want to be. And then number 3, here's the third thing. Once you set a goal and you recognize, okay, I want to change. This is what I want to be. I'm going to set a goal for me. I'm going to try to reach that goal. You then have to believe that you can achieve that goal. You know, our biggest hindrance is not really the first two steps. Most everybody gets the first two steps down pat. They get that, okay? We got to recognize that we got to change. We got to set a goal for ourselves. Okay, most people do that. But once they set the goal, what ends up happening is they start thinking, well, I don't know. I can't do it. Blah, blah, blah. We come up with all this stuff. I tried for 5 minutes. I couldn't do it. And we just give up. You got to believe it can be done. And the Bible gives us a lot of examples of people believing that seemingly impossible goals could actually be accomplished. Look in Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. Look at verse number 30. You remember how the Israelites walked around the city of Jericho to make those walls fall down? Now you just put yourself in those people's shoes. Okay? Here's some guy, Joshua, claims God's talking to him. He comes up to you and says, okay, fellas, we're going to have to march around this city. And when we march around this city, them walls going to fall down. What would you think about that? God's talking to this guy, and he's telling me that we got to walk around this city. The wall's going to fall down. Doesn't that seem like an impossible goal? I mean, how in the world is walking around a city going to make some walls fall down? Come on. Well, they did it. And those walls did fall down. Well, how does Hebrews chapter 11, verse number 30 say they did that? Look what it says. It says, by faith. By faith. That's the key words here. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were compassed about 7 days. They believed that that goal with God on their side could be reached. Okay? That teaches me something. Whenever there's a goal or a challenge set before me, no matter how impossible I think it may be, if God is with me, then I need to have faith that it can be done, and it will be done. Look in verse 17. Hebrews 11, verse 17 talks about an even bigger impossible seeming goal. Hebrews chapter 11, verse number 17 says that Noah, by faith, built the ark and saved his family. By faith. Now again, you think about it. Put yourself in the shoes of Noah. Now I get the water bottle. Needed that 5 minutes ago. But you think about Noah. God comes down and says, you got to build an ark. You got to build this huge, gigantic ship, and you got to put all the animals of the earth on it. That way you can survive and can make sure the animals survive and you can repopulate the earth. What are you telling me? I mean, just think about that. Imagine you're Noah and God tells you that. What are you talking about, God? Build some boat and I'm going to survive this huge global flood. I ain't never seen nothing like that before. Well, what does Hebrews 11:17 say? He did it. How'd he do it? He did it by faith. Now, y'all, let's be real here. The goals that they had to accomplish are bigger than the goals you got to accomplish. Bigger goals than what we have to do. Our goal is just to become a better person. Their goal was to build a huge boat that would survive a flood. If they could do it by faith, then surely we could accomplish our goal by faith. Because you got to recognize, y'all, God's with us, and God has promised us that He's never going to leave us, fail us, or forsake us. And Philippians 2:13 says that God is working in us both to will and to work for His good pleasure. God is the one at work within us. And y'all, we got to believe in that. God was with Noah. God was with Joshua and the Israelites, and that's what made that seemingly impossible goal a reality. And y'all, that same God is with us today. And until we get that through our heads, until we believe that, we're never going to accomplish our goals. We're always going to stay the same. We got to believe that. But one thing that really hinders us from believing we can actually change and become what we need to be is naysayers. A lot of people who are a negative influence in us, or a negative influence to us, that really stop us and hinder us. You know, sometimes you'll have people and they'll think, you're trying to change, you're trying to develop, you're trying to grow, And they'll say, come on, you got time for that later. Let's go have some fun. Let's go out, let's do this, let's do that. All the time. What they're really doing is they're getting in the way of our goal. They're hindering us. And sometimes the biggest naysayer of them all is yourself. Like I mentioned to you earlier, sometimes we are the biggest hindrance because we constantly shoot ourselves in the foot. We go to change and we just tell ourselves, we just sit there and think, well, you've tried this before. And you've done it several times and it's never worked. You try it for a couple of days, but eventually you fizzle out. You get bored with it, you give up, and you just don't do anything. And we just keep thinking that to ourselves, and then we just give up. Sometimes we ourselves are the biggest hindrance to believing that it can be done. So you've got to set a goal, and you've got to set a challenging goal, and then you've got to recognize that God is with you, and that with God on your side, it can be done. Have faith that it can be done. Number 4, and this is one that's probably the most important. Once you set the goal, once you have faith it can be done, your mind is set on it, you are determined it's going to be done, you got to work for it. Hard work. Y'all, there is absolutely no way around hard work. You will not grow until you roll up your sleeves and dig deep, dig down deep and push. You're never going to grow. So many times we try everything in the world to get out of hard work for ourselves. When it comes to evangelism, it can take hard work if you're going to actually go and talk to somebody, right? Hard work because you got to think of what you're going to say to the person and how you're going to do it and this and that, and you got to study for it and get ready. A lot of hard work can go into that. So we think, we'll take the quick and easy way out. Invite them to church. I don't have to do anything then. Just get them to come to church. The preacher does it all. End of story. And then we think about studying personally, our own personal Bible study, trying to learn the Bible for ourselves. Well, that takes a lot of work. Preacher, Sunday, church, we'll just do that. Quick, easy way out. 20 minutes. Sometimes I think we work harder trying not to work hard. I think we work harder trying to get the easy way out than we do if we actually just did the work that was in front of us. And don't misunderstand me again, I'm not saying it's wrong to invite folks to church. That's perfectly fine. I do it all the time myself. And I'm not saying it's wrong to listen to a sermon. That's great. But we cannot rely solely on those things. We have to learn to do some work ourselves. Jesus said, in the verse I quoted to you earlier in Luke 13:24, that we have to strive to enter into the narrow gate. In Hebrews chapter 4, verse number 11, the Hebrews writer says that we have to labor to enter into God's rest. Hebrews 4:11. Philippians chapter 3, verse 14, Paul said that we have to press toward the goal. Press, strive, labor. That's directed to each and every individual Christian. This whole Christianity thing will not work unless you do. So many times we set these goals, we believe maybe we can do it, but if you don't do anything, you think any results will come? Absolutely not. It takes each and every one of us recognizing that there's work to do. And when it comes to working to reach your goal, you got to do whatever it takes. You need to recognize that no matter what it takes to reach this goal, if it has to be done, it has to be done. If that cell phone gets in the way of you and God, you throw that thing out in the yard. No matter what it takes. If that TV gets in your way, you cut it off. No matter what it takes. If you have to write 1,000,000 sticky notes and stick it all over the house to remind you what you got to do, you do it. Hard work. If God really means the most to you, you'll do it. You will find a way to grow. You will find a way to develop. You'll do what it takes. We do what it takes when it comes to other things that we really want. Oh, I want this new car. And buddy, we'll bust our knuckles and we'll do this and we'll do that and we'll do anything and everything to get that new car, to get this or to get that, and we'll work hard for it. Why don't we put that same enthusiasm and that same work ethic into ourselves spiritually? Why don't we do that? When we start doing that, then the results will come. You have to be patient. That's another thing about working hard. You have to be patient. You know, you can't expect results immediately. Well, I worked hard today. Results will come. Keep working hard, keep pushing, be patient, and they will come. But it doesn't come overnight. And we expect, you know, and in our society, the way the kind of people that we are, we want immediate results. And if we don't get immediate results right here, right now, we think it didn't work. We work hard for God one day and we don't see any kind of really real results, and we think, well, that didn't work, and we give up. It ain't going to happen just in one day. It takes consistent effort, consistent every day. We all know Acts 17:11, right? Says that the people of Berea searched the Scriptures daily, whether those things were so. They didn't go to work once or twice for God. They went to work every day for God. Let me tell you something. Those people got results. If we want results, that's what we're going to have to do. So this morning, these are just 4 simple things that if we will actually take these things to heart, and if we will actually apply them to our lives, we can see a real change. We can develop. We can grow. We can become what we've always wanted to become. Have you ever thought about this? Sometimes as Christians, we struggle to keep going. We struggle to keep motivated, and we're constantly in search of somebody to motivate us. We're constantly in search of somebody to keep us going. Have you ever stopped and think about this? Why don't I become the motivator? Why don't I become the person who helps other people? Why do I keep staying in the position where I constantly need motivation and I constantly need help? Why don't I grow to where I become the motivator? I become the helper. See, that's what needs to be our goal. And remember Hebrews chapter 5, verse number 12, the Hebrews writer told the Christians there, for the time that you yourselves ought to be teachers. You have need that somebody come in and teach you again. What will be the first principles of the oracles of God? That's what the Hebrews writer was telling those folks. Y'all need to grow and become the motivators. So growth is very important. And whenever we fail to grow, y'all, that leads to so many other problems. You know, we think, oh, the church today, we're struggling with liberalism in the church. We're struggling with false doctrine in the church. So many false teachers and all this other stuff. You want to know why that comes from? It really comes from a lack of development on our part. So many false teachers get away with what they do because sometimes we don't recognize what a false teacher is. Well, why don't we recognize them? Sometimes it's because we haven't grown like we should. So failing to grow can lead to so many other problems, and it's very important that we learn to do it. This morning, if you're here among us and you're not a Christian, then we want to give you the opportunity to obey the gospel. The Bible says that you can be saved by putting your trust in Christ, by believing in Him, by repenting of your sins, confessing your faith in Him, and then by being immersed in water. If you're here, you are a Christian, you have obeyed the gospel this way, but you're strayed away, you've not been living faithful to God the way you should be, then we want to give you the opportunity to repent and to be restored. If we can help you anyway this morning, then why don't you let it be known as together we stand and sing.